All right, welcome back. So we are going to conclude the section with nested controllers. So naming nested controllers by relationship. What I mean by this is it's kind of the opposite of namespace. So in this case, we're going to have a new data structure. It's going to be called ingredient, and I can hear the shouts of hooray that I didn't say recipe again, because we're not going to recreate recipe. You will, in your project, if you're following along, you will need recipe created as a structure. So that will need to be a registered model. By that I mean it will need to be in the dunder init file for your models. You'll need recipe. If you want, there's a quick command right here that can do that for you. I have our project from the prior videos, and it already has recipe, and it has the namespace of test kitchen set up. So we'll review that, but we're going to create a new data structure called ingredient. And you could just create ingredient. We've done this before. You could do it similar that you see here at the bottom of the screen by doing this instead of recipe ingredient. So just make an ingredient controller, and that works. But future you is going to be a little upset with current you, because if you come back to the project later, you're going to end up with all these data structures, and you're not going to see in the code, especially in the file structures of your code, the relationship between your data structures. And it's really nice because you'll have different features and they'll contain different models. And it's nice when you can see, oh, well, this model belongs to this feature and this model belongs to this other feature. So seeing that in the file structure, being able to see it very quickly in the code is nice, in addition to being able to see it in the database. Of course, you would see this in the database. If you looked, you would see that ingredient would have a recipe ID, so you would know, okay, this ingredient goes with this recipe. And that's what we're doing, right? We're saying, here's a recipe like pizza, and there are several ingredients that correspond to pizza. You need flour, you need cheese. So you would have like recipe 1, which is pizza, and then ingredient 1, which is flour. So you have in your URL recipe 1 / recipes, and then /1 / ingredients / and then 1. So ingredient 1 would go with recipe 1, something like that. And we'll see this when we build this out. So now, if you don't have recipe registered and you write this command, what you're going to end up with is recipe is going to end up as a namespace. And I can show you that, and it mentions that here. So let's go to code and see what I have right now. So this is a route. This is the test kitchen recipes route. So you can see in the prior video, this is what namespacing looks like, right? Test kitchen is a namespace. There's no ID after this. And so it's just a place to kind of organize your logic. And so we have 2 routes in this. So let's go under app, routes. So we have the recipe routes. And so here I have a recipes. So I see all the recipes. It's the index page. And then I have a recipes with an ID. So that's the show page. But then under test kitchen, I have a recipes, and I have all the CRUD routes. So in test kitchen, they can do everything. They can see all the recipes. They can show up a particular recipe. They can create recipes and store them in the database. They can edit them, and they can delete them. So that's what we have set up so far. What we're going to add is an ingredient. So in the model, we'll see ingredient pop in here. In the routes, we're going to see a recipe, and then under recipe, so not under test kitchen, we're going to have a new folder under recipes called ingredients, and then it's going to have all the RESTful actions. Now, I did say that we're going to see an ingredient model pop in here. It's not actually going to do that in this video. We're going to do that in the next video. So excuse me for that. I slipped up there. And the reason for that is I'm actually kind of showing you this in steps. So we're not going to add -m, and you're like, well, just add -m. Why won't you? And hold on to that, because that is that's going to open a whole nother can of questions, right? For right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put -CRUD, and what that will do is it will treat the thing before controller like it's a model, okay? And it's not going to actually register that model. And you'll see that when we add the -m, there was some questions on what should have been the model. And so we'll be able to see, you'll be able to actually be prompted, and you'll have some options. So I don't want to give too much away there. For now, we'll just hold off on the -m. So let's go back to code. So we won't see a new model being formed, but we will see a whole bunch of routes being formed. And those routes, we'll use a controller, and it will be our recipe ingredient controller. We just have recipe controller, and we have a test kitchen recipe controller. So this is for that namespace area. And then the templates we'll see under recipes, we'll see an ingredients folder appear. All right, so without further ado, let's bring, and it looks like I have it off on the other screen, so bear with me. Let me pull that over. Here it is. Okay, so, and as I do these videos, every once in a while I have to do them again, and I notice, because you just make a mistake. If you get a warning or whatever here, just one thing I notice is make sure you're not in your virtual environment. I don't put Flask Commands in my virtual environment. I just have one locally on my whole machine. So that may be the problem if you're getting an error. So that happened to me, and I just thought it's worth mentioning. Okay, so we're going to say Flask make controller recipe ingredient controller. I'm going to bump this down so that we can see it all on one page or one line. And then, it's weird. Don't know what all that extra stuff was. Here, let me just copy this so it's not. We'll go down a couple lines here. Clear it off. Okay. So then, and then -CRUD. For those of you who, like myself, love to try out new things, go for it. Try a -m and see what happens. You will be prompted. So just a fair warning there. And you'll also see that in the next video. All right. So we're going to do this, and we're going to see what happens. Boom. All right. So if I told the truth here, we should have a recipe ingredient controller with 7 RESTful methods, and sure enough, we do. And then under routes, let's close that controller up. Under routes, under ingredients, so we have a new folder called ingredients, and ingredients should be registered in the init of recipes. So This was, when I first saw this, a little odd to me. I was like, whoa, we're registering a model in another, or registering a blueprint in another blueprint. That's crazy. But that allows for that structure of being able to say recipes dot ingredients dot and then your action. That's allows you to do that in your URL for. So that's really nice. So we have that registered. Here's our ingredients, and there's our dunder init file, and it's just your standard dunder init. And then here is our routes. And notice in the routes, the recipe comes after recipes comes the recipe ID. So it got treated as data structure, and then our ingredients come, and then if you need an ingredients ID on your route, you have one. So you have this kind of, in many cases, double IDs going on, which is so that is the nesting effect. And then in our templates, we should have a new folder called ingredients under recipes, and we sure do. And then we have the the create, edit, index, and show page. So without further ado, let's go to the URL and see if things are broken or not. Looks like everything is up and running. So we have a recipes, right? This is from the old video. And we have a show page where we can see a particular recipe. Now, these are all just generic stubbed out HTMLs. They don't actually have content in there. That I leave for you. We're just building the data structures and wiring up the templates. All right. But what's cool now is I should have an ingredients, which would be all the ingredients for recipe 1. And I should be able to go to the show page for ingredient, which would be ingredients and then a number. And I should be able to go to the create page. And sure enough, everything is wired up and working, and just one command. All right, let's go back. I had a little just flashed on me, so I spliced this together. So let's go back to Test Kitchen. Test Kitchen. And there's no Test Kitchen slash, right? It's Test Kitchen recipes. And maybe so we don't go to a weird search page or something like that, we'll just go to 1, and then we'll go back and see, do we have that? Yes, we do. So you have Test Kitchen recipes, but you don't have Test Kitchen recipes and then ingredients. Like, that doesn't exist, right? That's a 404 error. That's because in our routes, if you look at our routes file, we never wrote this. So if you want ingredients, that's not in Test Kitchen. That's just strictly under recipes. And so that will get us back to a page. All right. So the key takeaway here is this statement that I put down here. That Flask Commands treats a leading segment as a parent resource. By parent resource, I mean it's a data structure when that segment matches a registered model. So, and you want the nesting scenario, you want the leading structure there treated as a parent so that you get those IDs. So recipes was a registered model, so that's the parent, and then I'll refer to the child as the data structure that kind of comes after that. So a recipe has many ingredients. So the parent is the recipe, the ingredients is the child. And then the controller is just tells Flask Command that this is a controller class, right? So we're able to build out these kind of routes when the leading thing is a registered model. When it's not, then you're just going to end up with a namespace. Let's see if we can break things. And I always like to see what we can do. Test the limit here. So let's close all this. Let's CD out of here. Okay, we have our project, and we're going to come back to Cooker. We're just kind of putting it on the shelf for right now. We'll come back here much later. Let's make a new Flask new my project 2. Okay. And let's close VS Code for my project. All right, so let's CD into my project 2, and we will run it. Toot. So we have a fresh new project, no recipes at all in this project. It doesn't know a thing about a recipe. If you go to recipes, you are going to end up with 404 error, and sure enough, you do. Let's go to VS Code, and all right. So this is my project 2, and I'm going to run the exact same command that we had before, and you're going to see, so this is a fresh project, models, no recipes, routes, just the mains. Okay, so let's come in here. Let's run the exact same command. Make sure you do not have your virtual environment activated. If you haven't put Flask commands in your virtual environment, if you have, then by all means activate it. So we're going to do Flask make controller, and then we're going to say recipe ingredient controller. Okay. And minus CRUD. All right. So we have no recipes registered in this project. We do not have recipes registered in this project, but we're going to just go for it. We're going to see what happens. And if I'm telling you the truth, it's going to use a recipe as a namespace. It's going to take the thing before controller and treat it as if it was a data structure. You won't see the model pop in, but you'll see IDs in the route for ingredients. All right, let's run that. So you're going to see no changes in the model. Check. You're going to see a recipe ingredient controller with 7 RESTful actions. And notice the IDs that come across are ingredient IDs. They are not recipe IDs and ingredient IDs. In the routes, you're going to see recipes and ingredients, and that gives us that naming structure that we like. So we can say recipes.ingredients, even though recipe is just, in this particular example, just a namespace. And then there we go. And as promised, you prefix everything with recipes. So hopefully that brought home the concept here, which is that when you're making these nested controllers, if you want a relationship where it's a recipe and an ingredient, you need the parent registered. If you're just doing a namespace like we did up here, then you don't actually register the parent. In this case, it was a 2-word namespace, test kitchen, and then recipe was already registered, and so we just we were able to get this namespace of test kitchen. In this example, we didn't have any, in the second one that I made, we didn't have anything registered. as far as recipe or ingredient. We just ran this, and it still treated ingredient like it was a model. And so basically, when you write CRUD, I had to think, okay, you're thinking that there is some model. So whether it tries its best to find that model, and if it doesn't, it just kind of treats that thing before controller as the model. Now, we're going to see much more in depth how you can control this when you actually put -m in there. All right, so we'll see that in the next video, and we'll start a whole new section in the next video. So see you in the next video.